The Art of the Steal is the 10th episode of the 8th season of Cheers. This is directed by the wonderful James Burrows, and as always there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode and share some thoughts. There's a dodgy bit of audio at one point which I'll explain. I don't know if I would have picked up on it. Had I not been aware of it beforehand, I'd be very keen to know if you picked up on it without knowing that it was going to happen, and I'll talk about that in a moment. I also just want to take a moment to talk about George Wendt. This is the first time I'm watching and reviewing Cheers since his passing. He died a few days ago, and I've said a few things online here and there, so I won't say too much other than it's devastating, heartbreaking. My thoughts are very much with his family and friends, and we've lost a great one. But I won't dwell on that too much. So the episode, it starts off with Norm trying to explain the value of the dollar to Woody, and he does so by ripping up money from Cliff's wallet. Cliff has gone off, and then Carla decides to start doing it with a 20. And my first thought was, isn't that illegal? At least I'm pretty sure in the UK it's illegal to rip up money, but according to IMDb, it wasn't real money, which I kind of believed would be the case anyway. I don't think anybody would be so bold as to rip up actual dollar bills on television. And then, after the intro, we're still carrying on with this conversation, and then Sam comes in and we find out that he has hair insurance, and then Rebecca tells Carla in her office. Carla goes to her office, and Rebecca is worried that Robin is finding her boring. She's still not slept with him because, as she said, it kind of just became a habit at this point. And Carla talks about a time she had sex on a carousel, not a fairground carousel, but an airport one, which I think is better. I'm not entirely sure. I think that's less traumatizing for the people around them than if she did it at a fairground. But either way, Carla had a great story to tell, and Rebecca seems like she's going to have some good ideas, and we'll come back to Rebecca in a moment. We then have more conversation about the economy, and Norm produces a Monopoly board, and he's going to be the banker and help Woody understand this very complex world of economy. And Woody wants to be the banker, but Norm said, and I absolutely love this, if I can't be the banker, I just won't play, which I absolutely adored. And then Norm and Frasier are fighting over the race car piece, and Norm, Cliff, Woody and Frasier are all sitting around the table ready to play, and it turns out over the years Norm had lost some of the pieces, so they're using random pieces, and then he brings out the dice, and it's just these two giant purple dice, which I love. And what I love particularly about it is that they didn't focus on it. They didn't make a big deal out of the dice. It was just, there they are. And I love that because it's funny without putting too much focus on it. And that in itself, the fact that there wasn't really any commentary about these giant dice in itself was even funnier. So absolutely loved it. Rebecca then leaves with a plan, but then there's a phone call at the bar. Sam answers it. It's Robin, and Robin is going to be 3 hours late. So Sam needs to get this message to Rebecca, and Carla happens to mention that Rebecca's gone over to Robin's with this plan, and this is where the audio issue happens. And I knew it was going to happen. Well, no, I didn't know it was going to be an audio issue, but I was aware that there had been some pickups with the audio, because IMDb explains that originally Carla was meant to refer to Rebecca's bare ass, but apparently due to ratings codes at the time, they had to change it to buck naked, which is what's in the episode. But the audio has been kind of poorly edited, and it's kind of overlapping whatever Carla was saying. It hasn't been edited effectively, and I played it down to 0.5 speed, and I can't quite hear what Carla's saying underneath the buck naked, but it kind of overlaps. And as I said, it's very brief, and if you're watching it on normal speed, maybe you'd think something was a little bit off with the audio, but it's not overly apparent. But being aware of it, it definitely does stand out. Sam, then having found out that Rebecca's going to be buck naked in Robin's apartment, he rolls over the bar. He doesn't quite leap Woody style, but he does kind of roll over. And once he leaves, Carla explains where he's going, and Cliff remarks that Sam leads a pretty exciting life. To which Norm responds, Cliffy, compared to ours, a tapeworm leads a pretty exciting life. And then Cliff responds to that, I happen to be an expert on tapeworms. And then we find out that he had a tapeworm and couldn't go to the science fair. So a really, really brilliant exchange. We're then at the apartment, and Sam has arrived. I have to say, for a high security building, he was able to get into that apartment really easily. That's maybe the only thing about this that's really unrealistic. He was able to get into the apartment and walk in and see Rebecca naked. And of course, she screams and she says, "Quick, throw me something." So Sam grabs, I think, an apple from the fruit bowl and throws it at her. It's not quite what Rebecca meant. Eventually, she's wrapped up, and then, by wrapped up, I mean she has a sheet around her, and she tells Sam to get out. So they go over to the elevator, and she's frantically pressing these elevator buttons. And it turns out those aren't the elevator buttons. They're the security system buttons. And the security system has been activated. The room goes into lockdown. And they're stuck there. Rebecca gets dressed. They try and find a way out. And now they've activated the laser beams. And the room is full of laser beams. And honestly, it looks terrifying. And the phone does ring. So Rebecca crawls across. She thinks it's maybe Robin's driver. And it's not. It's Carla. Carla's phoning to say that Robin's actually not going to be back until tomorrow now. He's been delayed further. And it was a fun moment seeing Rebecca crawling across the floor. We very briefly go back to the bar where the guys are still playing Monopoly. And Norm points out that Woody has been putting the money that was supposed to go into the bank with his own money, which I have to say, I've never done that, at least in my recollection, I've never done that, but I imagine it's something a lot of people try and do if they're keen on cheating at Monopoly. We're then back in the apartment. Sam crawls over to Rebecca, and it's a really sweet moment. I really, really love this. Rebecca's lying on the floor on her stomach, leaning on a pillow. Sam has his head on the pillow. He's lying on his back, and he's reminiscing about how he and his brother would stay up late and just talk. They would just lie there in bed. They're separate beds, obviously, and just talk. And Sam pointed out that he hadn't really done that since he was a child. And I believe it. Because when he was in a relationship with Diane, it absolutely would have been Diane doing all of the talking if they were lying in bed at night. So I believe it. And we have a really nice moment between Sam and Rebecca. And Rebecca points out that actually when it comes down to it, they're quite alike. And yeah, I have to say there are definitely similarities between Rebecca and Sam. There are a lot of differences as well. But I think they both want to be liked or wanted by other people. And I think that's definitely a big similarity between the pair of them. And I love them so much. And I thought it was such a beautiful, beautiful moment. And then in the morning, this was so beautifully executed. In the morning, the security system lifts. I don't know why the security system now thinks that the threat is over just because the sun's come up. But nevertheless, the shutters on the window all go up and the light pours into the room, and it's gorgeous. And I would like to start my day that way. I think that's absolutely beautiful. The cleaner then comes in. Sam and Rebecca hide under a rug, which was not very convincing. And they go over to the elevator. And they get in, and Rebecca thanks Sam for not making a move on her through the night. Granted, they were stuck under the laser beams, so I'm not entirely sure what they could have done. I mean, they probably could have crawled through to the bedroom, but nevertheless, they were stuck under the beams, not as if Sam could risk doing much. But it was very sweet. And then Sam said to Rebecca, which I have to say, if this episode aired today, if it was broadcast for the first time today, I don't think they would have put this line in. I think it's maybe too much of a risk if you think a little bit deeply into it, because Sam says, "I want to thank you for being such a sound sleeper." And Rebecca is nodding along with this. And then as the elevator doors shut, she turns to him and says, "Hey!" And it beautifully executed, absolutely gorgeous. But obviously what that is implying is that Sam kind of did inappropriate things to Rebecca while she was sleeping. Obviously, he didn't. I don't think for 1 second anybody would watch that and think that's what Sam did. He's just making a joke. But the fact that they're making a joke about doing that to somebody while they're asleep, I think today, I don't think it would go down very well. But things, at the time, things were a little bit less, people were offended less, put it that way. I just don't think it would be appropriate today. But nevertheless, I don't think Sam meant anything about it. I don't think for a second he did anything to Rebecca. But yeah, maybe if this was broadcast for the first time today, maybe they would have proceeded with a bit more caution. So it was interesting. But Rebecca's response was very funny. And I think Rebecca very much knew that Sam was joking as well. So all things considered, I think that this is, as always, a fabulous episode of Cheers. The Art of the Steal is an absolute joy. Do I have any personal highlights? Oh, Carla's earrings. I forgot to mention Carla's earrings. She's wearing ice cream cones. They're absolutely adorable. Personal highlights. Norm saying that he won't play if he doesn't get to be the banker. Absolutely loved. Just everything about the Monopoly game. I thought it played out really well. Sam rolling over the bar, absolutely brilliant, and certainly the heart-to-heart between Sam and Rebecca when they were having a really lovely, I'd say meaningful conversation without anybody trying to make a move on anybody. They were just two friends lying under some laser beams, and I rather liked it. And as I said at the beginning, it's devastating that we've lost George Wendt, and at the time of recording, the Cheers, the Bull and Finch, they have an online guest book where you can leave some messages, either for George Wendt in his memory, and I thoroughly recommend doing that. There are some beautiful messages. As heartbreaking as it's been so lovely to see so many amazing posts of people on social media sharing their memories of George Wendt or working with him or just sharing their love for him or his characters. It's been beautiful, but it's been very, very emotional. And this episode, as I said, was the first episode I've watched since his passing. And it was a little difficult, but also it's very, very funny. And it still managed to lift my spirits. So very happy with that, of course. It's a great episode. Really thoroughly enjoyed it. The Art of the Steal is an absolute joy.